amazing. Obviously, so that's, kind of more like at 25 years old. Then at 45, going to Silicon Valley, with all my experience, Google included, but the entire Silicon Valley experience of optimism, of the power of tech and Moore's Law and foresight of what great things can happen. I think these are, I would say the final one for me was actually, strangely enough, taking my sabbatical after leaving Google. And I stayed as for almost 3 years, I stayed an advisor to Larry and Sergey. But, taking a pause from the frantic lifestyle and seeing how fragile our planet is, seeing everywhere the rich poverty divide, and interestingly, the complete lack of correlation between wealth and happiness, like huge lessons out of these things. So that's kind of like what shaped me to actually come back and do what I do now. So pretty lucky guy.
Absolutely. And Patrick, my impression of you is you set a very high bar with regard to what starting with yourself, with regard to how you want to spend your time and what you want to commit to, but also with regard to others. And it's maybe just a matter of fact how precious time is. If you want to get behind something, you need to do it wholeheartedly. But I find this quite interesting with regard to our entrepreneurial world and what you want to take on. Can you just describe, is that an impression I have, or is that really innate in you, and how would you articulate that?
No, I think it's fair to say that people that work with me will describe me as, in French, we'll say les deux pieds dans le gaz, which is like both feet on a gas pedal, like flat out. And that's just, and in a really weird way, I'm going to, again, talk about luck, right? We're going to talk about luck a lot in the coming minutes. I'm basically a hyperactive child before Ritalin. So they failed to medicate me. And I just grew into a hyperactive adult. And so I've got this luck that, I get up in the morning and I'm looking at things like my poor mom and dad. In hindsight, it must have been terrible. But then you have to decide. So depending on your level of energy and enthusiasm for things, then you have to first accept that everybody's a bit different. So, my family still think I'm an idiot, right? There's no reason, Patrick, for you to work anymore. Why are you working, say, 80 hours a week? But I actually believe that you have a fundamental choice in life, which is you have to decide fundamentally why you work. So I have seen many people who work to pay the bills so they can do what they really want. So it's a mean to an end. And I bear no judgment. I'm just saying I've seen there's that path. And then there's the path that I've chosen, which is I've decided to work on the things that I'm passionate about. And by doing so, I never got up in the morning to go for a job. And in fact, when I typically quit jobs, it's because they've turned into jobs. And so for me, I chose the second path. So if you're like me and you're going to work 12 to 14-hour days most of your life, then, do what you really like. And so for me, it's been pretty easy. And then the consequence of that is pick something that's consequential. So I just think that, and it's really important for all of us to understand that I bear no judgment. Some people, my brother, for example, for all of his life, he wanted to work from 9 to 4. He wanted to pick his kids after school. Like for him, that was a huge priority of his. He wanted to be in a swimming pool. He wanted to be at the soccer field. He wanted to be that was a preference of his. And I completely respect that. In some ways, I actually admire that. It's not for me. I can't do that. Like at the soccer field, I go crazy. And so so it's not for me. So that's okay. So then just everybody finds their own slot, right?
Patrick, maybe if we jump to the sort of how that ties into your perspective on entrepreneurship, having seen the value, as you alluded to, now with a UK London-based perspective, and you've been with Innovia for almost 2.5 years now. What's your sort of view of the state of the Canadian startup ecosystem?
Well, that's the good news, and I think I've made the right bet. So again, I'll take luck, but I made the bet that Canada had changed in 2017 when I started having these conversations with Chris at Innovia and Dennis, and I think my bet is proving right, which is the following. 10 years ago, in 2010, let's go back to 2010, there was no public Shopify. There was no public Lightspeed. There was no public Nuvi. There was no Coveo that was thinking of going public. There was no Cement, right? And in Western Canada, there was no AlayaCare. All these companies, the ecosystem 10 years ago was, if you can make a 200 million valuation, exit, declare victory. And what's fundamentally changed, and I adore about Canada right now, and I see the same in the UK, is we've had enough wins that entrepreneurs in the last half decade have started saying, hey, how come I don't have a global company? How come I'm not the leader in my field? Instead of just saying, okay, I got a 500 valuation. So 500 valuation, look at Lightspeed, right? I mean, 3 years ago, it was a 400 million valuation. And today it's a $5 billion valuation. They could have easily sold at 400. That's what's changed. It's a huge change in mindset, a massive positive for Canada, I believe, and something that we need to grow and support. So many other small countries, size does not matter, right? Israel is a tiny country. They just have the same mindset, right? Switzerland in its own way, super small country, same mindset. Look at Singapore. So I think that Canada has fundamentally changed in the last decade. And now is Canada's time for all the IP that we generate through the best universities. Like, this is our time. So I think that that's why I'm super thrilled to have joined Innovia and happy to invest and triple and quadruple down in our winners.
Can you explain for people who don't know Innovia just a little bit about the sort of stage you invest, the funds you have, the focus, industries, geographies?
Yeah, so Innovia it's a venture firm based in Montreal, but it's very Canadian. So partners, so we have a Canadian partner in Silicon Valley. I'm from Calgary. We have a Canadian partner in Calgary, Sean. We have 2 partners in Toronto, 2 partners in Montreal, and then I've opened the London office a couple of years ago. Innovia from 2007 until now has always been in its core an early stage. So writing the check, and if you go back to my story a minute ago, writing the check for 250,000, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 7 million, the A series. And then they run out of steam at the BCs because now they don't have enough capital because they're early stage. And they lived in the old world where they sold their companies. Like you sold Luxury Retreat for 450 million US, right? So that was the old world. And with the growth fund, so in 2017, we decided, okay, let's bolt a growth fund on top of it. So now, if Innovia could, until 2018, write checks of 250,000, say to 5-7 million. Now Innovia can write a check anywhere between 250,000 and 200 million. And so we can take our Canadian companies and absolutely fuel them. And we have great co-investors with us. We have an entire kind of network with us to invest. So where do we invest? I'll make it easy. We don't invest in really, really deep tech. If you do quantum something software, too long, too IP, too university-like, we won't touch that. And by the way, we wouldn't say we have the skills for it. We're excited about it, but we can't invest in it. We don't do life sciences. So if it's a molecule that's bonding with a T cell, something, too complicated. Again, you need to have 16 PhDs and huge teams. Everything in the middle, we'll look at tech, software-based, typically B2B or B2C. And then we have a penchant, we have a slight kind of inkling for doing good. So I'll give you an example. I'm sure somebody's going to make a fortune and it's legal to do marijuana. We don't do marijuana. We shy away from gaming. We think that gaming in 10 years time, all these companies will be sued like the cigarette companies are being sued today for like the addiction that they create. And from a social good perspective, we don't think that that's kind of for us. Having said that, we'd invest in Zwift if we had a chance to, right? Zwift is a game, but you got to pedal. And so if you have a pedal and get a great workout, then I'm okay with that, right? So we keep a complete open mind, obviously. So that's essentially who Innovia is. And what we can do that very few Canadian firms can, we obviously, because we're very deep in Silicon Valley, we can take you all the way through a Canadian firm through North America, deep networks in the US, and now very deep networks into Europe. So we can take your company to Europe and make it grow internationally super fast. So that's basically Innovia.
And Patrick, Innovia is one of the pillars, I'd say, of sort of stated objective that you alluded to earlier this year, or maybe, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but of being part of creating the next 30,000 tech jobs in Canada. So I wonder, there's Innovia, there are role models for entrepreneurs now, as you've alluded to, with the Lightspeeds and the Shopifys. You're involved in things like CDL, which is an amazing initiative across Canada and beyond about translating university technology into commercial applications. How do you sort of, other elements in how that 30,000 jobs can actually be realized?
Well, it's funny because that conversation started with the end of my sabbatical. So let me ponder for a second, if you allow me. When I finished my sabbatical, and you, for everybody, right, you should know, I basically bought a brand new pair of hiking boots, a new bike, and a good backpack. And I was 2.5 years on the road. And I've been to Antarctica, I've been to Everest Base Camp, I've crossed the US on the bike. I mean, I've been around and all over the world. And what that experience taught me, it was a huge reminder that I actually had won the biological lottery by being born in Canada. And it made me realize how much, Canada, the US sells this thing that, you can make it big in the US. It's the land of opportunity. I've actually come to conclude that Canada actually is a terrible marketer. It actually delivers the American dream, which is we're the real deal. We have caring capitalism. Don't get me wrong. We're not for equality in Canada. We're not a socialist country. We're a capitalist country, but we're a caring capitalist country. It's not perfect, but we believe in equality of opportunity. And so for me, to be able to deliver on that so that the next generations can benefit from what I've benefited, right? You need to have accessible education. You have to have free healthcare, and you have to have the wealth to support all this. But unfortunately, for that, you need wealth. And so I basically thought, you know what? I put myself like, I'd Google, and Sybil and everybody else will remember this, right? The word I always use was like uncomfortably excited. So what's a number that kind of doesn't make you throw up? But when you put it out there, you're like, oh shit, I got a lot of work to do. And I thought 30,000 jobs. In my conversations with Chris and Dennis, we agreed that if we could put 30,000 new high-tech jobs, we would create enough of a critical mass to get the benefits of what you see in Silicon Valley, which is essentially when your startup fails, like the 40 people that are working in your startup, there's already 5 other jobs next door waiting for them. And once we've got that, we've got it. Like it just fuels on itself. And so that's why 30,000 jobs, Alan.
You're also touching on something in that conversation, and also maybe with regard to the filter and lens that Innovia looks at things, but you've alluded to what I describe as sort of an enlightened capitalism. And I know you've been a big proponent of B Corps. Can you talk to that as well, as because it's something I've definitely seen in my time as I'm still very young in venture capital, as you can see on the screen. But I feel like the generation that's coming through now are way more socially aware, and rather than looking to create wealth and then do something with the wealth in the future, they actually want to do both in parallel, whether it's through their company or in evenings and weekends. I just wondered, your take on that and the whole role of B Corps and why you've been supportive of that initiative.
Yeah, so I wrote, it was a bit controversial even within Innovia because you kind of like walking on eggshells when you talk about this, but I decided to walk right into like a dog in a bowling alley on this conversation. I actually think that, again, it's tainted by my view. Canada's got a better regime, but the U.S. regime, which is for-profit corporations, is. And let's go back to definitions for everybody's benefit, right? The definition of a for-profit corporation, it's an organization whose aim is to earn profits from its operation and is concerned with its own interest. That is the definition of a for-profit corporation. And so if you're in the 17th century and you're kind of like creating, the East India Company, and it might have worked perfectly, but in the 21st century, when we have environmental pressures that we see, if we have the technology that creates such a vacuum of wealth into the 1%, and all of the social issues that you can create with these corporations, I think that the plain vanilla kind of view of a for-profit corporation doesn't make sense in our world today. So I think that, it's what's really interesting, and this may resonate with the people at Google on this call. I think that the C Corp, as we know it today, and the stock price appreciation treadmill of quarterly earnings, when you're starting, it doesn't matter. But once you get scale and you get big, when you're at Google, it puts so much pressure once you're public on putting even more ads than necessary to deliver, because of that treadmill quarterly performance, that you end up in the ditch whether you like it or not. And I think that if you set up, like in Britain here, there's this company that makes these little computers, Raspberry Pi. They've set up a trust on top of Raspberry Pi, the operating company. And that trust is a nonprofit. And a vast majority of the profit of the operating company flows back to the trust, which actually has a mandate to only do nonprofit work and do good. And so if you think you're building a company that has a shot to be the next Google, even Larry and Sergey, who wrote in their first sentence, right, we're not a conventional company, we're going to stay an unconventional, and we don't plan to be one. Whether you like it or not, once you have, $1 trillion market cap and you got quarterly earnings, you're now like, to phone your shareholders and say, I'm going to take half of my market cap and give it to charity, can't do it. You'll get sued. So think about it up front, because you have such a great opportunity.
Patrick, can we come back to you've kind of crossed the table, as it were. People talk about, you're on the operator side, you're on the entrepreneurial side, or you're on the venture side. Can you talk about what it's like for you now to be in that VC role, the kind of things you bring to bear, and maybe the challenges, and also particularly something our industry has long focused on, the doing skills of how to scale, how to grow fast, how to raise finance. But there seems to be a greater emphasis on the being skills, and how do you be a great leader and more aware of all the different stakeholder issues to manage. And you personally, as a leader and entrepreneur, have to almost scale faster than your startup, which is hopefully also scaling incredibly fast. So I just wonder what you bring to bear in your new role on the VC side of the table.
Yeah, that's why, interestingly, again, for the benefit of Rick, that's why I decided to become a VC. And it was really Bill Campbell, whom I worked side by side with for many years. Bill was dying of cancer, and we used to have these long walks together. And he basically said, Patrick, in your next career, become a coach, because you can become a coach for 10 companies. You can't do 50, but you can do between 5 and 10 well, which is what he did. And you have leverage. You can help a generation of leaders to really become amazing leaders, build amazing organizations and amazing companies. And so for me, it was a question of leverage, because it would have been easy for me just to become a CEO of something and then just lead it. And so I think that the role of Innovia, and certainly the way I see my role, the way I know Dennis and Chris see their roles at Innovia, is because we've been business builders. Like, we have all the whip marks. We've made all the mistakes already. Like, sometimes twice. Like, we're not that smart. And I've shut down like Pearson Airport on Thanksgiving weekend. I mean, we've done like crazy shit. And because we've done all that, what we can offer our up and coming leaders is to not do the mistakes we've done. We have not only, mileage, but we have foresight because we've done it 5, 6 times, 7 times. And so that wisdom enables you to get so much more velocity as a young CEO and young founder, because now you can get a board that actually says, I know, Isabelle, I know you want to do this, and here's the 6 reasons why you want to do it, but listen to me for my 9 reasons why you don't want to do it. And intuitively, it makes sense because of the stage you're at. And then you tell Isabelle, trust me on this one. And then sometimes you say, okay, Isabelle, if it's not that big a deal and we know we're going to end up in a ditch, but I can pull you out, it's okay to send you in the ditch once in a while, right? That's totally okay. So you make a judgment on that. That is the magic that we can bring. And I counsel everybody who goes for VC money. Let me make this postulate everybody I talk to, which is the world is awash in cash. The last thing the world needs right now is another dollar. What founders need is not money. It's the value add of who will you have on your board and who will you have on your speed dial to help you on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to build a great firm. Because if you got a great mousetrap, there's often 2 or 3 on the side that are also competing for the same thing, and pace matters immensely. So that's how we do it at Innovia.
And Patrick, with regard to, you've alluded to your hyperactivity, finding a job where you're completely passionate about, but entrepreneurs are obviously all in, and sometimes the detriment of family, health. How do you advise on just work-life balance, and maybe also in this particular environment on managing through the COVID crisis, the lack of personal interaction? Any tips for all of us on?
Let's start with COVID. Even I have to, I'll be, and I told my partners that I know of you about a month ago. I'm not used to doing video calls for 18 hours a day. And after 6 months of video calling, on Friday nights, my brain is fried. Like I am mentally tired, and it takes a lot to tire me. And so now, because it's like playing video game all day long, right now I know why it's so evil. It's just like, I don't know what it is. But for me, because I want to be attentive. I want to be there with the people that, like that 1 hour, they deserve my attention, right? And so 14 hours later, 6 days later, so during COVID, I've now learned Saturday, I shut down my computer. I've told my partners, I've told everybody, I'm off the grid every Saturday, and I do manual work essentially. I mean, I run a lot, I train a lot. Like I ran a half marathon last Saturday to stretch my legs. I'll do these long bike rides. My wife always freaks out when I'm dangling off the kind of like the 4th story of our building, kind of trying to fix something outside with just my kind of climbing ropes. And so Saturday is completely off limits for me right now. That's what I do. And then Sunday I go back to work, but I go back, at 10 in the morning instead of my usual times. And I needed that. So I've adjusted. So my point to all of us is COVID is not a normal time. So please do recognize it's not a normal time and adjust accordingly. Now that I've said that, there's a more fundamental issue, which is, I think on work-life balance, I am probably the least well-positioned to talk about it in the sense that I adore to work. But having said that, there's a line I cross where I work too much. And I've learned where that line is for me. And everybody's got a different line, and everybody's got a different circumstance. So I'll give you an example. My life has gone through, I'm making a really, really rough picture here, but when I had young kids, bath time was really critical at home. And so my wife kind of put, her finger up my nose and said, buddy, bath time, you're home. And so between 5:36 and 8:39, it was like tools down. And I was very happy at 9:30 or 10 to put my wife to bed and then get going again. And I can't tell you how many meetings I had until 2 in the morning. And I was fine with that because I was okay with it. I would work really late, but nobody suffered, right? When my kids were teenagers, it was a different set, right? It was like the soccer fields and the swimming meets and all that stuff. And so I think we have to be respectful of what are people's needs. And then we have to listen to people to say, hey, where's the line after which I can see you become grumpy? I'm making a rough image, but you get the point. And so rather than to say, here's the prescription, right? And the prescription is just follow these 6 rules. My simplest answer is, as a team, because we work as team, like if I look at Innovia, I have some of our people who are young without children. You have some that have young children. You have some that have teenagers. The trick is to make sure that everybody stays healthy, stays balanced, and to the extent that we're essentially end product oriented, right? We just have to deliver stuff. And so if you can do it in 6 hours, deliver it in 6 hours. If you can do it in 12 hours, do it in 12 hours. Like, I think that is the smartest way to navigate the work-life balance. And so if you only need 2 hours a day to rest, like I have some friends, they need 4 hours of sleep. I hate them. I wish I could do it in 4 hours of sleep. Are you kidding, man? I don't know how much I'd pay to get that pill, right? 4 hours of sleep all their lives. That's all they needed. And they're just amazing people. And they get up in the morning after 4 hours. And no, worse than that. I can't drink, right? If you give me 2 drinks, I'm drunk. Like, they can suck back a bottle of whiskey at 2 a.m. with me while I'm kind of trying to have my chamomile tea to survive the evening. And at 8, they're up and running with their coffee and they're blowing. Like, just relax. There's people like that. Like, you don't have to be like that. And the good news is there's not that many.
I see some of them on our call here today, Patrick. And before opening it up to our guests, our participants' questions, can I just ask you, for everybody, what's your recommendation, your counsel in terms of engaging with Innovia and yourself? You're looking at so many different amazing projects. Everyone has a high respect for imagining that Innovia could be that amazing partner, not just for finance, but all the value add. But it's a challenge just to know how to best approach and get your attention.
Again, because of who I am, and I mean, if you talk to Sibyl and Marie-Jose and everybody else, they'll tell you, like, personally, I just think that, so there's an existential issue in what I'm going to say, which is, I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't believe in anything. I just think the moment you have is the moment that we have. That's it. So that's a huge caveat. So if you bear with me for a second, if you believe that, and you're basically the custodian of 3 million years of evolution, and we're there to actually pass the baton to the next gang who will make it a safer, better, more just place. And if that's our job, then I look for opportunities, ideas that have global aspirations, that tech is core to the answer. I look for consequential companies. Google, I continue to be a huge supporter of Google. I think it's not a perfect company. It's a consequential company. It's a company I'm proud to be associated with, right? Even AlayaCare, which is in our portfolio. AlayaCare gives productivity tools so that in-home care for our aging population can be done more efficient, so that the employees in these, because they're pretty typically kind of tough jobs, low-paid jobs, give real meaning and real development opportunities for these employees in a world where somebody's got to take care of all elderlies. So step function tech makes big difference. So we kind of invest in people and ideas. And the last thing I would say, Alan, is, when we invest in a company at Innovia, we kind of know we're with you for 5 to 10 years. So pick a decade, all right? Most marriages don't last that long. And so for us, it's really about, are we in this thing together? Are we going to have, through the ups and the downs, we're going to build something great and have a great time doing it. So that's how we think about investment at Innovia.
Fantastic and inspiring. Martin, can we open this up? I see lots of questions are coming through chat, and I'm sure everyone wants to ask. different things
Yes,
of
there
Patrick
is.
while we have him.
Martin, comment
Bonjour,
tu
il y
veux
a
faire
plus-
ça, les questions? C'est toi qui me
Ben,
les
je vais,
dis?
ben, je pense que les gens, il n'y en a pas tant que ça, c'est les mêmes personnes, donc je vais les nommer, comme ça ils pourront poser leurs questions. Ils sont dans le chat. Je pense que vous connaissez les personnes. Je vais commencer là, par Chibil. Je pense que tu en avais deux questions. Ensuite, j'irai avec, ensuite je vous nommerai là, chacun votre tour, là. Elia Benjeloun, puis ensuite on fera les prochains en ordre.
OK.
Oui, salut Patrick, juste un commentaire. Tu as raison, Google est une compagnie qui a des forces et des faiblesses, mais beaucoup des forces sont le résultat du travail que tu as fait à Google. Alors, nous aussi, on est fiers de t'avoir avec nous pour un certain temps. Une question, quelle est la force, où tu trouves la force du Canada, où est-ce que le Canada peut se différencier?
Je pense que le Canada, en fait, est différencié. Puis c'est ça qui est extraordinaire du Canada. Je le dirais à 2-3 niveaux. Le premier, c'est on a un IP extraordinaire au Canada. On a des bonnes universités. Puis, je pense qu'encore une fois, les Canadiens, on est très Canadiens. Fait qu'on s'excuse, right? When in doubt, let's apologize, right? Because we're Canadians. And the fact is, I mean, again, I'm all over the world, and we have great universities. We have great talent. Like, we have great IP. And so I would argue we're overweight on talent and IIPs and more on ideas. So that's one piece, which is a huge asset. The second piece is we have a huge strategic advantage in terms of cost structure. Notre structure de coût au Canada relatif à Silicon Valley n'est pas comparable. Un ingénieur à Silicon Valley, là, tout le monde sait it's the promised land, right? Oh, I'm going to become an engineer in Silicon Valley. Okay, so you go there and they pay you $220,000 base salary US, and you live in poverty. C'est incroyable, hein, Martin? Pour 225, tu sais, presque un quart de million, là, tu vis dans la pauvreté. Parce que ton petit appartement, là, ton petit, il est 3500$ par mois ou 4000$ par mois pour commencer. Puis, à partir de là, tu pars, puis ça monte. So, and by the way, in Silicon Valley, there's a culture of changing organizations. The minute that you've gone public, you've made your switch, or you know that your company is not going to make it, you switch. Everybody hops around. And so you have no real sentiment d'appartenance. And in Canada, we have stable, low cost, well-educated, and thoughtful employee base. And that's a huge advantage. Massive advantage. And then the last piece, which is even better, is under Trump told the whole world, if you're a PhD engineer in computer science and you're from India or from Ukraine or do not come to the US. We don't want you. And not only that, we'll make it hell for your families to come. Il nous a donné un cadeau incroyable. Parce que tout le monde quand tu es intelligent et tu veux une meilleure vie, puis tu regardes, OK, dans le temps, c'était les États-Unis, puis là, tu regardes, OK, où est-ce que je peux aller? Le Canada, c'est parfait. Tu es juste à côté des États-Unis, c'est stable, tu as la paix, tu n'as pas 250 millions de guns dans la rue. It is amazing the advantages that Canada offers. Like, it's genuinely amazing. Puis, on est juste à côté des États-Unis, fait que tout le marché est là. Ça répond à ta question, Chibin.
Super. J'ai une deuxième question. D'après toi, comment le monde va être après Covid? Est-ce qu'on va changer notre façon de travailler? Est-ce qu'il y aura des transformations dans certaines industries? Quelles sont les choses positives? Quelles sont les choses négatives?
La réponse, c'est évidemment, je vais être un économiste 10 secondes. Là. Oui et non. La réponse, oui, c'est, on l'a vu we saw in the last 6 months, because of COVID, some fundamental areas of industry and tech, like the penny dropped. So the best example of that is seeing a doctor on video, right? Distance education, quality distance education. There's so many areas where all the barriers to kind of make a big open the floodgates were always regulatory and maybe, and we should do another pilot and the government's going to think about it. And right. There are so many areas of tech where now it's like, shit, there is no reason, right? And in fact, it's better on all counts. If you can see a doctor on video for half an hour or 20 minutes super quickly to see, is it really worth going to the hospital or not? And it's super efficient, and then everybody's happier, right? And flexibility in work, flexibility in access to them. And in fact, je pense que tu as toutes ces forces-là de digitalisation qui sont toutes des bonnes choses. Fait il y a plein de positifs de COVID de ce côté-là. De l'autre côté de la clôture, les gens qui disent we don't need an office anymore fail to understand the power of collaboration and problem solving live. They also fail the power of breaking bread together. You know what's amazing is with COVID, nobody kind of bitches about not going to the office, but every bitches about not being able to go to a restaurant. And you know why? Because that's how we share, we think, we exchange, we problem solve, we debate, we push. It's together. And I think that if you're just a coder working on a line of code that you're going to pass on to, your buddy at, 8 hours later so that they can go around the world, you can work anywhere. But if you're in a real leadership, if you're in really kind of in the product development, if you're really into the problem solving, technical problem solving, with or without COVID, we would have needed Los Alamos to figure out the atomic bomb. With or without kind of COVID, you need to have, the Max Planck Institute. There are areas where you need to be together. So I think, again, on va voir une bifurcation. More and more of the clerical tasks can probably be done in fact, safer and better in a distributed way, so that you don't have a call center full of people that if one person gets sick, everybody dies, right? But that's good. But there's a number of areas where obviously more than ever, we feel the need for in-person. So that's how I kind of see how this thing's going to roll out. And I can't wait for my pub to reopen.
Merci. Peut-être je prendrai la prochaine question, là, c'est Elias.
Elias, tu veux enlever ton mute, puis me la poser directement.
Elias, you can ask the question directly if you want.
Yeah, otherwise we can read it. I think I can see.
Je vais la lire. Voilà, ici. We have enough wins to have entrepreneurs say. Celle-là est difficile à lire en anglais. Mon anglais n'est pas super bon. Désolé tout le monde. Je vais l'essayer. Si vous ne comprenez pas, on la refera. We have enough wins to have entrepreneurs say. Why not me? At 1 plus BN, indeed, equal. What would be, if ever, enough win to have the same for ambitious billions dollar startup tackling some great humanities challenges ahead, such as climate change? C'est pas clair, hein?
Attends une seconde, laisse-moi le relire. So we have enough wins to have entrepreneurs say, why not me? What would be, if ever, enough wins to have the same ambition billion-dollar startups tackling?
Sinon, si la personne n'est pas là, on peut aussi prendre la prochaine.
Je pense, je peux peut-être, I can resume. I think what he's saying is that now we moved from wanting $100 million to wanting $1 billion. When can we move from wanting $1 billion to wanting to do something that's good for humanity?
Yeah, and look, I'm an optimist on this front. There is, when I talked about the B Corp, what I meant sincerely in this is, like, there's two ways you can create value for the world. Right? Now, I'm going to come back to my own first principles. One is waste, like this, for like old people like me. When I grew up, my idol when I was studying business was Tahichi Ono, who essentially invented the Toyota production system. And Tahichi basically kind of wrote this beautiful little gem of a book called The Toyota Production System, where he declared there's 7 sources of waste. And you can imagine inventory as a source of waste, right? But he also had movement as a source of waste, which was actually beautiful. And so economics and technology can reduce waste dramatically. So if you think of, we shouldn't be romantic about the past. I mean, 50 years ago, like if you have the choice to be on welfare in Canada today or to be the king of France 500 years ago, I know the one I'd pick today, no doubt. Because the minute I have an abscess in a tooth and I'm the king of France in 1349, just before the Great Plague, like that's a bad place to be. So I think that
you had better wigs.
Pardon me?
You had better wigs as a king of France.
You had better weeks?
Wigs.
I'm sure there was 1 week in your life that was pretty good, but I mean, on average. So the point is, technology enables a lot of efficiencies that makes our lives better, and we should not discard that. The issue that we have is, I think that we as a society, obviously, we also have a role to play with the wealth we create to make sure that it's balanced. There's a theory of economics, which is called the donut economy. I encourage everybody to kind of take a look at it, which talks about sustainability as a core principle. It comes back to the issue of the B Corp I talked about a bit earlier. And as you create wealth, I mean, then you also have the option, if you have the right B Corp, take Patagonia, right? Super successful company. They plow a ton of their profits into environmentalism. Perfect example of a B Corp that's got great balance. And by the way, Patagonia, they have an ad that says, if you don't need this fleece for Christmas, don't buy this fleece for Christmas. They don't want you to buy it because you don't need it. And so I come back to my dopamine issue, and I'll be very kind of personal on this. If you walked into my closet today, I think you'd freak out. I have very few t-shirts. I have very few fleeces, as a matter of fact. Most people joke about the fact that I always wear the same 2 fleeces. I see no correlation. That's what the trips taught me. There is no correlation between stuff and happiness. So the sooner we actually focus on these things, the better we can be. So I completely agree with the statement. I think it's a balance of both. Like I think that we need the efficiency so that we have safe lives, that we have, heated houses that are efficient, that are, our education systems that are efficient so that people can learn twice as fast in half the time. Like all these things are good for society. They make us go forward. And at the same time, we should leave nobody behind. And that's why the 30,000 jobs matter immensely to me. Because with these 30,000 jobs, we can continue to invest in hospitals so that everybody gets free healthcare. Because we all deserve free healthcare.
Merci. Justement, la prochaine question dans le développement de carrière. Nectar, ça sera ta question.
Merci, Martin. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Pichette. I just wanted to go back to one point you said before, when in doubt, be generous. So you probably don't remember me, but I'm an ex-Googler, and we met 7-8 years ago, and we had a trip with a bunch of Canadian execs in Mountain View, and you took some time out of your day just to come and say hello and shake everyone's hand. And it was like the most nice thing. I'm like, I can't believe the CFO of the company is spending time saying hello. So ça m'a vraiment marqué, and obviously I've been following your career ever since, which kind of goes to my next question is, you seem to always go to the next level in your career, so always exceeding and moving up. So I'm curious as to how you think about personal development for yourself, more broadly, maybe also for the entrepreneurs that you coach, and how do you help them see their own limitations?
Yeah, so for myself, it's pretty simple. I get bored really fast. And so because I get bored really fast, once I've done the Rubik's Cube 8 times, I was like, okay, there's got to be something else to do. And so, and you come back to my first principle, which is I have one shot at this. And so every time I've actually plateaued and I stay on my plateau, then I know that I need to either within the place, set up a new bar or have to change places. And if you think at Google, I mean, I had such a wonderful time because I started as CFO. And then within 6 months, kind of Eric phoned me and says, real estate's all screwed up. Can you take real estate? Well, sure, why not? And then, after another kind of year and a half, then, it was like, how about people ops, right? And there was, how about biz ops? And so, you get kind of, okay, let's fix, and then, Alvarian and the economics team and this and that. It was super fun, right? And then Google Fiber and Access. And But then, toward the end of my, when we created Alphabet, it was very clear my job was going to be the same for the next 2 to 3 years. And so it was time to actually take the switch. So I think that it is important to burn bridges once in a while, and kind of, it forces you to rejuvenate yourself, to reinvent yourself, to reset the bar for yourself. So that, I think, is really important. And some people coast. So you can decide to coast, right? Once you hit and you can be incredibly efficient and very good at what you do, minimize the hours, do other things. Me, I'm a sucker for learning. I'm a sucker for kind of like going after the next big thing. And so that's how I've managed it for myself. And I think that, again, it's a very personal thing, right? I'm just incredibly ambitious. Not only do I run Innovia, but you may all know that I have my Canuck project. That's a 250-year project. I'm trying to build a national park and a wildlife corridor for species migration for everything that's in New England to migrate up to the Parc du Mont-Tremblant. Like, I scratched my head a lot on that one. But, and to come back to the previous question, right? I was incredibly fortunate to make quite a bit of money at Google. I've plowed a ton of that money in the Canuck project. It's all going back to the community. Nobody's going to own Canuck. It's not a private club for 5 guys. It's basically, I'm working with Nature Conservancy right now to hand over all the land so that it becomes part of the community, right? And so you should always ask. And then in the question of, for blind spots for the people I coach, everybody's different. Really, everybody. And the question is, you just find that I always look for that line. I come back to this word because it's so powerful to me. Uncomfortably excited, not freaking out, not in panic, but if you already know you can deliver everything you're doing, if your OKRs are said that you're going to hit 100% to 110%, you got the wrong OKR.
Nous sommes presque à 9 heures. Il reste, merci beaucoup, M. Pichette. Je vais laisser le mot de la fin à Alan. Merci beaucoup. Hein.
Patrick, I see there's a ton of other questions, but I think everybody will have really appreciated your generosity, giving your time today. But it's been super insightful and inspiring. I think you've talked about role models with regard to, amazing tech companies, but I think you're an amazing role model. Many things I think everyone will take away. I love your idea that Canada is the best representation of the American dream, because it's my adopted home. I think all of us here are very proud of Montreal, of Quebec, and of Canada, and want to contribute. So whether it's through particularly to our community through TechAide and TechAide. So really appreciate you being part of the cafe today. Look forward to seeing you back here when things are again new normal. And like to thank Behavior Interactive for sponsoring us, and encourage everybody to go and check out TechAide. I think in addition to awareness and any financial contributions, super important, one of the unique things we are tapping into is the creativity of our community that we've seen over and over again. At almost every event, we've brought somebody new into the network and they've come up with a new idea as to how we can animate and take it to a bigger level. So that's super inspiring too. So Patrick, thank you very much. Great to see you. Sorry you're going to be in London for Christmas, but have a wonderful time and look forward to seeing you in 2021.
Yeah, and to everybody, Shubil, thanks for reaching out. Alan, the same, for reaching out to me. C'est tellement plaisant de toujours vous parler, de vous revoir. Puis à tout le monde, la même chose que j'ai dit, je l'ai dit au tout début, please stay safe during this holiday. Like, the vaccine is just around the corner. Please don't do anything stupid, like for your family, for your friends, for your loved ones. We just got to stay cool for another couple of months after that. It's going to be an amazing April. So let's just hang on until we get there. Again, a huge thanks for inviting me. I look forward to catching up with many of you in the coming years to come.
Thanks, Patrick, and happy holidays.
Merci beaucoup, Patrick.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Merci tout le monde. Merci beaucoup. Bon retour à la prochaine. Merci beaucoup. On donne la semaine prochaine aussi. Merci à tous. Merci Alan. Merci tout le monde.
Merci Martin. Super
Merci,
boulot
Alan.
Martin, merci.
Fantastic
Merci.
job.
Même si je ne suis pas capable de lire les questions en anglais.
Oh, c'est bon. Salut tout le monde.
Salut Pierre. Salut Alain.